Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Todd coming at you with another episode of Living Your Best Life. And as always, thank you so much for hanging out with us, wherever you are, whenever you are in the universe right now. So, you already know what we do on the show, right? Well, if you don't, I'm going to tell you anyway. We invite professionals on to talk about what they do and how what they do is contributing to a healthier society, a wealthier society, just a better society in general, because that's what we really, really want. That's what we really desire. At least I hope we do anyway. But anyway, that's what we do on the show. Now, today we had an awesome guest on, Dr. Antoinette, because I'm going to go to Dr. Antoinette because I still can't pronounce her last name, even though she's told me a few times. Dr. Antoinette, she's a chiropractor. She's out of South Carolina. But her approach is dealing with the brain, okay, and how it connects with the body. Very, very interesting conversation. And another one of those walking brilliant encyclopedias, okay, she is. And so we're going to be talking about how stress can create, we've known this before, but how stress can create such havoc on the body that we don't even realize that at the base of some of our most popular diseases, like diabetes, like high blood pressure, yes, could be connected to the brain, okay? So we're going to be discussing that this afternoon. So please get your notepads out and get in contact with her if something resonates within you about this conversation today. But Dr. Twinette, okay, Antoinette, she's going to be a guest on the show. But before we get on to the show and the interview, please check out the challenge, all right? The Well Beyond 50 Reset Challenge, all right? That's what we have going on and starting up soon. So I want you to get on the next webinar, all right, to get the details on that next challenge, all right? Because we're making some major progress with some of our clients. Please get in on this one, okay? So once again, check out the challenge, and on the other side of the commercial, we'll get started with the podcast of Living Your Best Life with Dr. Antoinette, chiropractor. All right, y'all take care and see you on the other side. Be good. Peace. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the show, Living Your Best Life. Of course, like I said, below the next challenge, you want to get in on that because we're helping people get and stay well beyond 50. So make sure you click on the link to get on to the next webinar so you can learn more about it and find out how, yes, you too can get and stay well beyond 50. But as always, enough about that, all right? You've heard enough about that. Let's get on to some serious talk here because I have an awesome and brilliant person on this afternoon to talk about brain health. Okay. Now, I say when I say brain health, I want us to kind of like think about it coming from a holistic perspective. Okay, and because she is a chiropractor and just a brilliant chiropractor in the South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina. And I want to say thank you so much for Antoinette Biegaj. Did I say it correctly?
Yes, sir. That's good.
Oh, wow, Dr. Biegaj, for being on the show this afternoon. So, Doc, thank you so much for hanging out with us for a few minutes today. I look forward to learning more about the importance of what you're doing and what you're doing to help us all live a better life when it comes to our brain health. So, thank you so much once again for hanging out with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure, Todd. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and speak to your audience, and maybe we can save more lives together.
Yes, that's exactly what we want to do. And so tell me about, I guess your journey, Doc, within the medical community. What got you into what you're doing now? Is there something that you've always been into, or is it something that just like, wow, we have to, the light bulb kind of finally came on and said, we have to tackle this thing because this is really an issue.
Well, Todd, my journey into the healthcare field, especially chiropractic, began when I was very young. I was only 4 years old and was diagnosed with a scoliosis
Mm,
and or diagnosed actually with crooked hips from the medical doctor. The medical communities examined me for 2 full years. I wore hip braces, leg braces, and special shoes.
wow.
And it was quite impactful on my, development and things like that. Um, However, then when I was about 8 years old, so after 2 years, 4 to 6, the doctors tell my parents that, nothing changed. Go ahead and just deal with the cripple. And
Mm,
um, about 8 years old, I think you're in what, third grade or so, there was actually a chiropractor in the schools that was doing something called scoliosis screenings. You might have heard
hmm.
those before, where
Oh
the
yeah. Oh
child
yeah. Oh
bends
yeah.
over. And anyway, I was diagnosed with scoliosis and given some information and take to my parents. And lo and behold, they brought me to a chiropractor that they heard of. And I started within a very short period of time, then a couple of adjustments, my scoliosis started to actually straighten up and come to actually find out, Todd, that I didn't have crooked hips after all, like the medical doctors had said. I actually had a crooked spine. When you
Mm,
corrected the spine, the the hips balanced out, and that drew me into chiropractic. I knew I was going to be a chiropractor since I was 8 years old. It changed
wow.
my life to the depth of that. And bringing it forward, obviously, decades later, um, after being a chiropractor, always knowing the foundation of chiropractic in our philosophy, our science, and art, specific, is that the brain and the nervous system coordinate everything, do they not?
I've heard
If I ask
from the
you,
video
yeah,
that you
what
sent me.
coordinates everything, and it really would be, the answer would be the brain, right?
Hmm.
So looking at that and understanding that that is a foundation, Todd, that the brain and the nervous system coordinates everything. Why should we wait till there's a problem than to than to check the brain and the nervous system? Because
Hmm.
everything that is possibly dysfunctioning in our bodies, everything from sleep disorders to anxieties to even blood pressure issues that are so common, Todd, they're all related to the brain not optimally functioning. And so when
Mm,
I saw the opportunity then to actually be able to measure how the brain is responding to, well, let me ask you a question, Todd. Have you ever heard of a word? I know it's probably new to you and maybe to your audience. Have you ever heard of the word stress?
oh, oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
right. Well, the truth is that stress, Todd, has been linked to the underlying cause of over 90 to 95% of all diseases in the body. They've
Wow.
written books about it even since the 1930s. But the truth is, it's not so much the stress itself, it's your brain's inability to adapt to and recover from that stress.
Mm,
And so, what we are able to do in our office with the technology we have is we're actually able to measure the stress response in a body in a person's body when they are experiencing that stress, whether it be a physical stress, an emotional stress, a cognitive stress, if you will, and how the physiology in the body changes when the person is under stress, and then given that person an opportunity to recover from that stress. Just in
wow.
audio, just in audio format, the person is subjected to a stress. We're not, we're not physically harming them or anything like that. It's all non-invasive. It's a fantastic, fabulous response, basically, that we see when the person is perhaps, struggling
Hmm.
with their health issues and having no answers because it's all back to the brain. Everything is related to the brain.
That is. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to ask you, let's say you're where you're at, Todd.
Right.
What would happen if the fire alarm went off right there where you're sitting?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because the alarm system actually went off the other night
Right,
while I was asleep, and it woke me up out of my sleep. And you felt like everything was like you're trying to wrap your mind around what's going on. And so
right,
if it happened right now, of course, it's going to be either the fight or flight type of response or
exactly.
reaction.
So what would happen to your heart rate
Oh, it's going to go up because it's trying to
and
figure
your
out what's going
tension in
on,
your
whatever.
body?
Everything's going to
Right,
tense up.
tension
Yeah,
is going to tense up, right? Okay,
right.
why is that?
Well, once I'm thinking that it's trying to gather enough information to figure out what's your next move and
Well,
whether it's going to be the
yeah,
fight or flight.
right. And that's the going back, even going a little bit deeper into describing what's happening is that your brain perceived a possible danger. And
Right.
that perception then in your neurology, your brain and your nervous system, then changed your actual physiology. The brain
Yes.
perceives a danger, it changed the physiology in your body to match that perception. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Makes
Then
total
the fire
sense.
alarm being going, you finding out it was a false alarm.
Right.
Okay. Then what should happen to the physiology in your body?
Everything comes down.
Comes down, right? Because the
Right.
brain is perceiving safety
No longer threat. No longer
or
threat.
lack of danger,
Yeah.
and therefore it transmitted that perception to the body and its functions. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Makes sense.
But as complex, Todd, as our brain is, the truth of the matter is, Todd, that the brain cannot distinguish the difference between the fire alarm analogy and the fire alarm going off
Hmm.
and a type of stress like a fear stress or worry
Hmm.
stress or relationship stress or a financial stress or I'm late to work stress. To the brain, stress is stress.
Hmm.
So all of those physiological dysfunctions actually or responses are going to happen automatically in the individual whose brain is perceiving stress on a constant basis. And that's
Right.
the majority of what we find, Todd,
Yeah.
is that the brain won't shut up. The fire alarm is constantly going off.
Mm.
And that's what's causing the true issues with the majority of the individuals, the people we see, is that's what the true cause of their anxiety is. It's not the medication. It's the blood pressure medication that you might be on. Well, guess what? That's not really you're not getting to the cause. You're just covering up a
Right.
symptom. The
Right.
brain's not optimally functioning. And because it's not, that's really is the cause. So we work to identify the true cause of of the health challenges, the underlying cause of the health challenges that our practice members, are having, and then we get great results with them because of that. We get into the root cause. We bring in their brain, strengthening the brain and their nervous system, and because we do when we can do that accurately enough and long enough, the body will start to reset itself and heal.
What an amazing educational, class here. Because I mean, that was a class. That was a class. Bottom line, just taking us through that very elemental or elementary type of class here, and but at the same time too, complex in terms of wrapping our minds around the fact that a lot of our issues stem from the brain and the nervous system and how the brain is connected to the physical body, because we don't think along those terms. We almost see the brain as just this thing out there that's helping us, navigate through life, but not making the connection between the brain and our health outcomes.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I wanted to ask you, and I want to go back because you mentioned like mental stress, emotional stress, but you also mentioned cognitive stress. And is that what we're talking about here overall, with regards to the brain's or anxiety type of stress? Is that the same thing as cognitive stress?
The majority, well, let me go back to the mental stress and the emotional stress are actually some of the most significant stressors because they cover such a multitude of issues. The
Hmm.
cognitive stress that someone is subjected to is um, is when we do our testing, we call it a stress response evaluation. We're
Hmm.
identifying, basically, identify during the stress response evaluation, the individual is actually um, just non-invasively connected. We're measuring brain waves, we're measuring respiration, we're measuring heart rate and true heart rate variability,
Hmm.
along with tension in the neck and the shoulders, blood, blood volume, body temperature, and sweat gland production. While the individual is just cognitively or audibly walk through a stress. And the
Hmm.
stress would be for the cognitive is, well, a math test where the individual is subjected to a math test, okay, and doing some
Hmm.
simple math that basically a fifth grader or so should be able to do. But
Right.
the truth is, Todd, it's not the math test itself. So many of our community members basically either own their own jobs or work for somebody who has maybe a deadline or decisions that they need to make. And that specifically, Todd, is a cognitive stress. And so
Mm.
when we see them being challenged through a simple math test, when the readings that we find, and again, this is the first steps, but when the readings detect that their brain goes way off balance when it's a simple math test, well, guess what's happening when they're making the decisions and the actions of their own perhaps job,
Hmm.
or making, decisions for their family, or making, cognitive choices in their life and their lifestyle. If they're being stressed while they're just sitting here trying to do some simple math, and they're out in the environment 99% of the time
Right. Right.
and going through that. So it has a detrimental effect. But if we didn't measure it, we can know it. We can't know it. What you don't measure, you can't manage.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, let
And
me
that's
let me
why
let
it's
me
good.
let me ask you this question then, because
Mhm.
we can measure now. Where do you guys are? You guys do you guys help with building a stronger, more resilient brain and nervous system, or do you have some other type of approaches? Because how do you get on the other side of this issue? Because I'm thinking what we've been told throughout the years is relaxation techniques such as breathing. to bring all those stresses down. Meditation, walking, um, exercise, any kind of exercise, what have you, that can help reduce stress. So, is there something else that you guys suggest or have a system that can help with reducing these types of stresses in the system?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. But the first thing, though, Todd, is what we really need to do is find out what the brain type is.
Mm,
The types of brains, the challenges that we see are either an over-aroused brain, an under-aroused brain,
mm,
a chaotic brain. We see ADD, ADHD brains. We see exhausted brains. And based on the brain type that is we found, there's specific things that we do. For one
hmm
is well, we need to know the brain type. Otherwise, let's say we have somebody who's an over aroused individual. Okay, they're already over aroused. The last thing we need to do is something and tell them to go exercise and do something that's going to over arouse an over
Yeah,
aroused system.
gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
It's like, you can only carry 5 pounds, but I'm asking you to carry another 20 pounds.
Yeah,
Okay. That's
okay,
not going to work. So we need to know first and foremost. But basically, once we know, then we have very specific um, steps and basically a recipe, if you will,
right.
to bring the brain back in balance. But for the most part, we do see, for the majority of the individuals we do see, Todd, they are over aroused. And so what we do need to do is, yes, breathing. But how somebody breathes is big time. If you
Mm,
ask the majority of the people, Todd, let's just say you met somebody on the street, you were passing by and say, hey, my name is Todd. You know, can I ask
mhm.
you a simple question? Can you take a deep breath in? What do you think the majority, Todd, of the people are going to do when they take a deep breath in?
Well, I mean, I don't, I mean, other than the physical part of it,
What are they going to do? What part of their bodies are going to change when they breathe in?
the chest is going to,
The chest. Is it going to rise or fall?
it's going to rise up. Yeah,
Yeah, a deep breath
yeah,
in. The majority of the people go,
yeah. So they start from the
okay,
chest up.
right. Well, can I tell you something?
Please
Every
do.
time you breathe through your shoulders, you're sending a neurological message into your brain that you're in danger.
Ooh,
When you activate your shoulders to breathe, it's a sensory message that is repeated to the brain over and over. I'm in danger. I'm in danger.
wow.
Okay. Or I'm in stress. I'm in stress or I'm stuck in stress. Okay. That's not what we want. Okay.
Gotcha.
Can I ask you, can you be in two places at one time?
Not that I have ever done. I've never done
No.
that.
Right? Okay. Well, you can't be in really two modes of health at the same time. You
Meaning,
can't be in the stress survival mode and in the healing mode at the same time. Does that
mm-hmm,
make sense? So
mm-hmm.
we need to be in the healing mode 80% of the time and in the stress mode only 20% of the time. That's neurological balance. Not
Wow.
50-50. It should be 80-20.
So is that
Yeah.
is that is that a daily activity or is that a mindset change?
The first part of the question, sir, is a daily activity that most people need to learn how to breathe.
Right.
They need to learn how to breathe right. They need to be breathing diaphragmatically, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Deep breath in, the belly should go out.
Right.
Breathing out, the belly should go in, and the shoulders should not move. That's one step, as if to healing is we got to change modes.
Hmm.
We got to get you back into the healing mode and out of the stress mode, because you can't be in two modes, just like you can't be in two places at the same time. You can't be both in the healing mode and in the stress mode at the same time. So
Wow.
you can't be sleeping and running from a bear at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ought not be.
Yeah.
But that
That is,
healing mode,
yeah.
that healing mode not only encompasses, Todd, healing of our wounds or a injury, it's our sleep patterns. You need to be in the healing mode. Our digestive patterns need to be in the healing mode. Our reproductive patterns need to be in a healing mode. Our respiratory, our reproductive, our immune system needs to be in the
Mm,
healing mode to thrive. But so if we're stuck in the stress, is what we find, Todd, is that, yeah, it's okay for some people to, for some people, to have a stress and then recover from it,
mhm,
just
mhm,
like the fire alarm analogy, okay,
mhm.
that we talked about earlier. Okay, we experience the fire alarm stress and the physiology of the body changed. It should go right back to balance when the fire alarm is off. We find that it was a false alarm.
Yeah.
But for the majority of the people that we see, is that stress does not go away. It's stuck. We get stuck in stress, and the volumes of stressors and the categories of stressors just continue to increase and increase and increase and almost never stop. So we need a system that's going to keep that in balance. And we strengthen the brain and the nervous system to a point where you can adapt to and recover from stressors at a greater capacity and a
Mhm.
greater rate. And that will induce the healing.
That's amazing. Yeah, like I said, I've never thought of things this way. And thank you so much for that breathing thing because yeah, all my life I'm thinking that's just because I take a deep breath and I, practice deep breathing exercises, even though you've heard breathing from the diaphragm. I don't think we consciously make sure that I don't think we consciously are making that a real thing in our daily lives. Most of us are breathing from the chest up, when, like you say, which is really just piling on more of the stress. Now, the question I do have for you, Doc, because we live in a world now that is pretty much, and I would say the when you talk about the aroused brain, I mean, we are so caught up into our technology and consuming information all the time, whether it's good information or bad information, wrong information or right information. We're constantly feeding it information that I feel creates probably this aroused brain that you're teaching about. Do you see a lot of people are in that state because of our technology, because of what we have around us on a daily basis?
Well, that can be a factor, Todd. That can be a real factor, but it also can be when you're talking about technology. Chiropractic is been basically, it was founded back in 1895. Okay, it's
Hmm.
been around for a long time, and the founders of our chiropractic practice had always said there's three major causes for um for basically disorder or disease, and they
Hmm.
are thoughts, what you
Hmm.
think, your emotions, traumas, falls, accidents, and then we have toxins, what we put in our environment and in our bodies and the air we breathe. And then
Hmm.
now, obviously they're passed away back in 1895 when it was founded, but they always say
Yeah.
the three T's. But we really have four T's. We really have technology, like you just mentioned, Todd. Okay, we
Yeah.
do have technology. But number one, we have choices. We can choose to look at our computers. Let's just say you and I are on a computer. We can look at our computer in an ergonomically sound position that our bodies are in versus being in an awkward position, like leaning over, being stuck in front of the computer,
Hmm.
rolling our shoulders forward, jutting our head forward can have a tremendous impact on the physical stress.
Hmm.
Tell me if you have not seen kids in when you drive by when they're in school. They're now obviously, we're in summertime now, but kids at the stop sign at the bus stops like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What is that doing to the tech communication between the
Oh,
brain and the
I
body and the brain?
I think
And the
about that all the
posture.
time. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think about that all the time. I think
Yeah.
that in the next few years, the chiropractic world is going to see a large flow of people with neck problems
Yeah.
because of our position.
Because it's self-induced.
Yeah.
Self-induced. I mean, and the younger and younger, just like I mentioned, at 4 years old, I mean, at 8 years old, a couple of chiropractic adjustments made a difference in my body and my spine because I was so young. And
Yeah.
that impacted the my development and my, posture and my outcome. But the longer and longer the kids are, forward head presentation. So instead of that, if they're going to be on their phones, you're not going to get them off the phones. Instead of dropping the head to look down, how about just raise the device up in your hands? How about
Right.
let's not be so lazy and let's try to look forward. If you got to be on your phone, which you're not going to stop, you know, let's bring them up instead of raising down,
Right.
dropping the head down. That's one, tool that could have a, or, just one change that could really impact the lives of these kids that are developing. They're
Yeah.
growing big time,
Yeah.
and no
Yeah.
wonder why they're having, anxiety problems at such a young age, where they're having developmental issues. Well, the brain's not talking to the body. Have you, that's a big challenge. That's a definitely a big physical challenge
And
and
like I said,
developmental.
I see so much of that going on now. COVID.
Yeah.
Uh, and this is why I asked, because I have experienced long COVID impacts or effects. And um, and so when you get the green light that everything is fine, but you're still having symptoms of long COVID effects, such as some type of neurological dysfunction. You think that it could be uh, some type of um, not like it's just confusion, or you might feel a little vertigo or what have you, some of these things. Have you experienced people with long COVID situations that have um, come into your practice with that kind of an issue?
It's very, very common, and yes, and answer yes to the question itself
Yeah.
specifically. But the truth is again, it's something that starts to impact some of the patterns and circuitry and
Hmm.
that our bodies are in. And then we just the word before 2020 and the COVID issue hit, probably, I mean, COVID has quote unquote been around. They say there's all
Right.
kinds of vaccines.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of issues, or, what we had, COVID-19. Well, there's probably 18 of them before that, then, if this one's number
Yeah.
19. But it wasn't brought to our attention. It wasn't
Hmm.
brought to our forefront. And what we think about too can impact how we feel. And so, for you specifically, Todd, I would, suggest things like maybe listening to some real, like, when do you experience that for the most part? Let me back up. When do you experience that issue the most times?
Well, it can come and go. It's like it's just whenever. It's like
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It can be in the
So I was
morning, it can
thinking
be in
when
the
you,
afternoon, yeah.
yeah. How are you sleeping?
Meaning in terms of quality.
Yeah. Quality of sleep.
Quality, I don't, again, and this is another thing. I go back to technology because right now we
Yeah.
we test and we run everything by we monitor all these things. And so, you're looking at the quality of your sleep now guided by a watch on your phone. And so you're looking at those numbers. And so it just depends. Like if this were a true test of my sleep quality, I would say it would probably it says some days excellent, says some days good. Now over the past 2 weeks has been like fair.
Yeah.
And so I feel good throughout the day for the most part. But like I said, these waves can come in just kind of like whenever it wants to hit, it just hits and I have to deal with it. So go ahead.
What is supposed to happen when we're sleeping?
Repair,
Repair.
uh, repair.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Repair. Yeah.
yeah,
Your
that's
body heals and
heals.
repairs.
Right.
Heals and repairs. So my question would be, or basically the point would be, where is your brain and your brain waves? Are we stuck in beta brain waves? Are you leaving the focused making decisions state of your uh, of the
Hmm.
day to
Hmm.
be able to step down into the stress brain beta into alpha and into theta and into delta where we can really sleep. And
Hmm.
that's very important because, again, going back to the technology we use, if your beta brain waves is higher than it should be, anything 3 points higher than where it should be, which is we should be at 30%,
Hmm.
anything higher than that is significant, 3 points higher. And your theta brainwaves should be at 20. Anything lower than 20 is a challenge because beta to theta should be 10 to 20, 10 points difference. Any
Right.
off balance between that 10 points, either way, is going to significantly affect the way you get from theta. The next step down is to delta.
Wow.
So looking at all of that, this we can get volumes of information from the technology that we use and the readings, the readouts from it.
Yeah.
And so it can tell us, and the majority of the people that we do see, we were going to back to the over aroused. What we oftentimes find, Todd, is that our beta brain waves that should be at 30 are in the 40 to 45 range. So
Mm.
they're really, really high. And theta that should be at 20 becomes really, really low. That's your healing brainwave. So the
Yeah.
larger that imbalance is, the greater the struggle to create overall health and wellness and sleep patterns as well.
Right.
So that's some of the benefits of knowing first, and then we can set up specific care plans or specific
Right.
steps that we take for that.
And I think that's the important part is having a plan
Yeah.
after you kind of like know where things are and committing to that because life we allow life to kind of like get in the way at times. It's like that with my clients, sometimes we start out strong and then the next thing you know we're eating better, we're yeah. So and then the next thing you know, we're back to our old habits. Um, so now once a fixed or better or healthier brain, is it always a fixed, better, and or healthier brain? Because you spend a lot of time also speaking it to the people that have dementia and things like that. So share a little bit about that because as we get older, we're not what we used to be when we were 25, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. But as we get older, we do lose some cognitive function. And I see that mainly like right now in my dad, who's 86 years old. I watch him as throughout the years. Uh, Not that he's suffering from any of these things, but you can definitely tell some of the slurred speech and things of that nature. So, share a little bit about your work with that particular group of people.
Well, Todd, let me ask you a question. Okay.
Yes.
If you had pain, just like you're talking about with your possibly cut clients, if you had pain, would you want that pain to go away?
Yes.
That would probably go away, right?
Right.
Right. So it might, let's say you went to a chiropractor and all you wanted was your pain to go away. So he or she took care of you, and guess what? Your pain went away, and then you're gone. Just like you were
Yeah.
talking about your customers, okay?
Yeah.
So, however, Todd, when is stress ever going away?
Yeah, right, really. Never.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It most likely will never go away. So, in that statement, we need to have a a system or the ability to adapt to and recover from stress. And regarding the aging, now having another birthday, your dad, your family having another birthday is inevitable,
Mhm.
next year, the year after that. Okay. But aging, degeneration doesn't have to be go along with it. Just because you're 70 now, or somebody is a certain age, doesn't mean the decline is imminent. The
Gotcha.
problem is that at 20 years old, you had 20 years of stress.
Hmm.
At 30 years old, you had 30 years of stress.
Gotcha.
When you didn't have a system that can adapt to and recover from it. You had physical stresses. Most likely, you look like kind of an athletic gentleman. So I would guess that you probably spent years in
Hmm.
some type of sports. Okay.
Hmm.
Now you might be the greatest athlete, but I can almost guarantee you that you had some falls and some
Yeah.
traumas
Yeah.
while you were doing that. But you got right up. I mean, you
Yeah.
slid into home base in that baseball game was perfect. All right. But
Hmm.
what did that do to your body?
Yeah.
Little aching, and you adapt too. But it comes a point, Todd, that just like you've probably heard of the analogy, the straws on the camel's back, right?
Hmm.
We can
Hmm.
take so much stress. You're 30 years old, you have 30 years of stress. You're 40 years old, you have 40 years of stress. Okay. Just like the straw on the camel's back analogy, we can only take so much stress. And the brain, in its capacity to adapt to and recover from stress, it becomes limited. Our brains weren't designed to continue to keep all that stress, to
Right.
hold
Right.
on to it, to hold on to it. But what we find is the majority of the individuals who begin to significantly decline, especially mentally and cognitively, or those whose stress level adaptation ability is only about a 10, but their actual
Hmm.
stress levels are higher than they can adapt to. And the greater and greater those stressors become, and the less and less we're able to adapt to them, is that gap in there, Todd, is what is where all the symptomatology and the demise and the disorders live and happen. And that greater the stress gets with our lack of ability to adapt to it, that's that's the big one of the biggest issues. So you
Wow.
will always, coming back to, would somebody ever, once we help somebody improve the brain and the nervous system, when would you ever want that to not be kind of looked at or
Hmm.
maintained
Hmm.
in
Right.
wellness?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
when is stress ever going away?
Never.
Never. That's why you always want to at least adapt to it, have a system, excuse me, that's better able um, to adapt and recover to those stressors, recover from those
So,
stressors, adapt to and recover from it.
well, I have to ask you this question, Doc, and
Yes,
this
sir.
is kind of on the lighter side of things here.
Yes, sir.
Um, how do you adapt, and where are you? How are you dealing? How do you deal with stress?
I deal
Because
with stress in the well, number one, I see my chiropractor, who's not a brain-based chiropractor, but I
yeah,
use some of the same tools that I use on my clients for myself here. I do
gotcha.
that. I do a lot of deep breathing through my belly,
Mm-hmm.
deep diaphragmatic breathing. And the main thing is keep the main thing. I'm very spiritual as
Yeah,
well. So I have a
yeah.
foundation that is strong in that. So that's some of the main components of my, kind of control of that.
Right. So
Yeah.
this thing is about managing and adapting to stress. This is not. It's not about getting rid of stress because, like you said, it's always going to be there. But it's about managing it or adapting, your brain adapting to it
Well,
and
adapting and
not
recovering
overload,
from it.
recovering from
Recovering
it.
from
Right.
it. So once
Right.
what
Okay.
we have is, that that the stressors are never ending for, just like we say, they'll probably never end, Todd. That's why we need tools that we can use to help in that regard. Everything from, let's just say, the breathing exercises to, we use something called a brain tuner, plus the very specific adjustments, plus brainwave entrainment. When we find out, how deep the stress has stained the brain in keeping it from optimally functioning, that tells us volumes again of information. And so it's not ever a one size fits all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's what makes really how our office stand apart, because everybody's not going to, like I said, get the same thing. And
Right.
somebody might come in, and with challenges. And for example, there was somebody who came in the other day. She's 29, no, 29 years old, I think, 29 years old, Todd. And she came in because she was having sleep issues and she was suffering from anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when we did the scan on her, what we were able to see is that actually, because of the readout, we could see she's a candidate in the next 5, 10, maybe 15 years to have dementia
Wow. At
because
that
of the
age.
way the patterns are standing right now. So we want to interrupt that, change the trajectory from that. Yeah, she has anxiety, but That's an early sign. People who have chronic sleep problems, chronic blood pressure issues, chronic anything just about is a brain issue. And the
Hmm.
brain is going to have a be, you know, start to wear and tear. And different parts of a brain we could get into another time if you'd like, but
Yeah.
different parts of the brain are just going to start to deteriorate, and other parts of the brain are just going to start to take over and not be very productive in the healing
Right.
process.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Doc, as we come to a close here, how do you or are you able to help people that don't live in Charleston, South Carolina?
Yes,
Share with us
I
how you're
can.
able.
For number one, I can, number one, if you'd like to find a brain-based chiropractor, perhaps
Mm-hmm.
in your area, you can contact me. There's a database of doctors, chiropractors, brain-based chiropractors, or brain-based
Okay.
health practitioners is what we call ourselves, really.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, first and foremost, if there might be a chiropractor, brain-based chiropractor in their area, I can hook them up.
Okay.
Otherwise, we can connect and I can show them specific issue or tools that they could access that can help them
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they would want to, I could be a database for a lot of information and for issues
Gotcha.
there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And do you use any kind of supplements? Because I've heard omega-3s are something that can help with brain health. I don't know if that's really true or not. Do you suggest or
We do find there's sometimes, again, we need to know the brain type,
right?
because it's really important. We do have kind of a protocol list. We'll use lots of times though, there's some general things like ashwagandha
Gotcha.
and um, turmeric
Mm-hmm.
and some other just general type of supplements that we could use to diminish some of the stress responses in the physiology of the body. There's one
Right.
thing that stress does is it creates inflammation.
Right. Exactly.
Inflammation, especially chronic inflammation, is detrimental.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
can we do to diminish that inflammatory response?
Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
so some of
Gotcha.
those things, and specifically, I have to go and look at my list of what else we might be recommending. I know there's a number of
Right.
components there too. There's
Yeah.
also music therapy that we could recommend, but it's not the same type of frequency. You've probably heard of Solfuego frequencies there.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
the different frequency for different brain types. So somebody who is over aroused wouldn't want to listen to something that's over arousing, even in the Solfuegos. So it's a great, so knowing a little bit more about the person's history
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what
Will
they've been,
determine.
yeah, would help me to help them and be,
Right.
help them specifically. Because like I said, there's not one size fits all.
It's not a cookie cutter approach. Gotcha. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yes,
Gotcha. Binaural beats. When you brought up
binaural beats.
the music part and the tones and things like that, that made me think about that. Because that's something that I have, you know, toyed with a little bit, but not knowing really what I'm really doing with it. And I don't know if that's something that you are familiar with and
Yes,
may
sir.
have used before. Okay, yeah, gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha.
we use
So,
brain tap. We use
okay,
binaural beats. We use Solfego frequencies.
yeah,
But again, directing, let's say they're out, their beta's too high or their alpha is too low, any of the brainwave frequencies can be specifically, um, you know, um, regulated and retrained through those kind of binaural beats and um, that those tools there. That's one of
Gotcha.
the tools we have in our box, in our
Okay.
pocket there.
Well,
Yes,
I'm glad to know
very
that
helpful.
because that was something that I was kind of like, I hope I'm doing the right thing. So, so I'm glad to know that you are a believer and a practitioner of that approach also.
Absolutely.
Doc, I can't say thank you enough, for your information and your knowledge and your expertise and your passion for what you're doing because these are topics in traditional in Western world, in Western medicine that we're not talking about with regards to getting to the root cause of issues. And
Okay.
you're out here in this world getting to the root cause of issues. And that's why my hat's off to you and keep doing what you're doing. And I appreciate you once again giving some of your time to share your expertise this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Todd. Thank you for the opportunity. I really
Yes,
appreciate it.
yes. And so where can we find you? I just want everyone to hear and just to know, even though it's down there somewhere, where can we find you out there on this in this world of the web?
Well, you can always, number one, call me first. Okay.
Okay,
Call me. My telephone number is 843-856-9466. Eight four
gotcha.
three 856-9466. My website is ChiroMTP.com. ChiroMTP.com.
Awesome. Everyone, please do visit her website because she has a wealth of information out there, videos that you can learn from. I'm going to be going back and just, gathering some more of the videos. And like I said, just a wealth of information out there. And she is one of these awesome professionals that's a walking encyclopedia that I just love doing what I do because I get to learn so much from them. And so once again, please do connect with her if you're having issues with these challenges, stress and anxiety, or if you know someone that's dealing with dementia and all of these struggles, please do reach out to them because she's out there helping people live their best lives. And that's what we do on the show. All right. That's what we do on the show here. Once again, everybody, I want to say thank you to Dr. Biegaj. Say it again.
Dr. Antoinette is fine.
Dr. Antoinette. There we go. I can go with that one.
Okay.
And so thank you so much, Doc, for hanging out with us. And thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
everyone, for hanging out with us too. And once again, get in contact with Dr. Antoinette. I can do that one all day, every day. And but like I said, thank you so much, everyone. Y'all take care, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Living Your Best Life. Y'all be good. Be good. Bye bye.